Good morning. Good morning. It's Kevin from eLogger.
Oh, good morning, Kevin. This is Cynthia again.
Cynthia, how are
Oh,
you?
good.
Excellent.
Hold on. Oh, Kevin, let me just put you on hold a minute.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Sorry about that, Kevin.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Good
Okay.
morning, everybody. Um, just wanted to let you know too that I am going to record this webinar if that's okay with everyone. That way I can get it loaded onto our client portal. So if you'd like to view it again, or if you have other administrators who can't make it to this meeting or the webinar today, they can view it by accessing it on our client portal. But going to be same old, same old. So feel free in terms of the webinar. You can interrupt me at any time. Just say, hey, Kev, I got a question. If you know, as long as we're recording, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, just go ahead and put the question in the chat in the Teams chat, and then I will answer that question. So what you see right now is that little intro screen. So today's webinar is creating and using templates in eLogger. So I use the term templates and forms basically interchangeably. We call them templates here in eLogger. You probably have a bunch of forms that you can create as templates and use in eLogger. So you might have a Word document, you might have a PDF, you might have an Excel spreadsheet. Those are all forms. We talk in eLogger terminology, we talk those as being templates. Now, what we're going to do today is create those custom data entry screens, those templates. So we're going to create multiple templates today. We're going to use a variety of templates, and we're going to cover each template field, because in eLogger you can create templates that have specific fields, and in those fields they have specific functionality depending on the type of field that you want. So feel free to ask any questions as we go along. I also will apologize in advance, is that I will probably go a little bit over the hour today. Because I have this form that I'm going to create, and I want to make sure that I leave time for questions. So if you do have to drop off at the end of the or at the beginning of the next hour, feel free. If you can stick around for maybe another 5 minutes or so, I'll get through everything. So I'm going to get rid of this, and then you're going to see eLogger. So I have eLogger open, and I have this incident report entry. So today's webinars, I'm going to build an incident report form, be like a first report of injury or something like that. In fact, I have the form saved. So let me drag that over here. It's a pretty standard report, probably similar to something you already have, but if there is an accident or an injury or a report that needs to be made out, the employee would go ahead and fill this portion out. So what I try to do now, the templates you build are going to be dependent on a couple things: what your current form looks like and the type of data that you're collecting. Now, you can't take a form in, a Word document or PDF and make it look exactly alike just because the applications are different. So you may have some templates you create and have some log entries that you create that have just one template to it, have a lot of different fields in it. That's perfectly okay. It just depends on the type of form and the type of data that you're collecting. This form, I'm going to create multiple templates and attach them to the same login location, which you can do. And there's a couple reasons why I'm doing that today. The first one is, if you look at the form itself, there's these little kind of breaks in it. So I'm going to create multiple templates to try to keep it as close as I can to what your form looks like. The other reason you sometimes will attach multiple templates to the same login location is that you want to capture the data in one entry, but sometimes you need some different functionality. So like this witness statement, when I get down to the witness statement, I'm going to create a different template and I'll explain why. So we would go through, they'd fill out some OSHA standards, they'd have some pieces to look here, some medical treatment. They have an employee signature and a supervisor signature. There's some supervisory questions that need to be answered, and then the supervisor has to do an incident evaluation. So we're going to build all of those templates today. So you'll see this form in eLogger at the end of today's webinar. So again, feel free to ask any questions that you might have. If there's something that you just missed or something that you're not quite sure of, or just you have questions, go ahead and feel free. There's a lot of flexibility in creating templates. So even though I'm looking at this form, I'm going to try to create it as close as I can the same. There are going to be some things that I'm going to do differently. So away we go. And I'll try to bring this form back as often as I can. So this first chunk right here, it just has like some employee information, their name, the date and the time of injury, the date employed, the department or division, and things like that. So I'm going to build this chunk first. So I'm going to move this out of the way. And then to build templates, to start building them templates, we have to get into system administration. So click on system administration and we get into the templates tab. Now notice I don't have any. I like to think of the templates tab, this tab that we're on right now, as like an empty file folder drawer. All of the templates that you're going to build are going to be dumped into this drawer. So we are going to use the category system right here to kind of, the categories like the file folder that you're going to put in that drawer to organize all of your templates. Then what you can do as your template library will grow, because I'll have like 8 or 9 templates that I will build just today. And that's just for the incident report. So you may have down the road, you may have startups and shutdowns, you may have alarms, you may have a whole bunch of other different templates that you build. Each one of those can be categorized to your facility and to the best way that is going to organize it for you. So then once you build some of these, you have the ability to filter. So I have one eLogger environment that I work in a lot of times that has about 1,300 templates almost. So I need to be able to categorize those. So I can filter those once you build them. I can filter by a category. So you'll see that my categories, I have categories by alarm or by log types. I have categories by administrator. So I've seen that done in different ways. I've also seen categories that are by facility. So if you have multiple facilities, maybe you can categorize it that way. I can filter by alarms and I can filter by any combination of these options. So that's your ability to filter as your template library grows. So if you have to easily access a template, you can just filter it and bring it back. Now, the show export import allows you to import templates into your eLogger system. So let's say, for example, you go to Client Portal and you find a template you want to use. You can download the file, the XML file, and then save it, and then you can import it. And then you can assign it to a category, you can assign it to a location, take the imported out of the title, assign it to a log type, and then when you click on the import templates, it's ready to use. It is assigned a category, it's put in the correct location, it's put in the correct log, so you can also import templates that way as well. So that's the filter and the import export. Now, to create new ones, I'm going to click on add new here. Now this first portion up here, the title, description, the enabled function, the sort order, the multi-row grid feature in a category, you have to create, you input those pieces of information on every template you create. So the title, what I'm going to do, I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I am going to do some copying and pasting. So the title is going to be that employee report of accident or injury. Now the title and the description, you can format if you like. You can bold it, you can italicize it, you can change colors. So what I will do is I'll change this red so you can kind of see it. Now, everything that's in blue has the asterisk by, it's a mandatory field. So you have to title your templates. The description is an option that you can use. I like to think it works well for specialized notes or instructions or things like that, that you want your operators, as they are creating the entry or editing the entry, they will see. They will not see the description on the view logs page. They'll only see it on the add new screen or the edit screen. So if you want to put some, little notes or information in there, you can do something like this. Okay. So when they add the entry, they'll see this part here. Now we want it enabled. This helps, and I always say, don't delete templates, especially in the beginning as you're creating them, because if you have a template that you're gonna, maybe recreate or fix or something like that, you can always disable it. It basically turns it off for your operators. Keeps it for you as the administrator under the templates tab in system administration, but it is disabled for the user on the user end. And then you can go ahead and, if you're going to bring in a new template or something like that. So I want these enabled. The sort order is the order they appear on the add new screen. It's the order of your templates. And you can sort them either by the number, or you can sort them. There's drag handles, and I'll show you the drag handles as we make some. Now the multi-row grid function, that allows you to add multiple lines of the same information. So when we get to the witness portion of that form, I'll show you how the multi-row grid feature works. And then this is where that category, I can't stress enough, use categories, because if you could build 50, you could have 500 templates. You want to be able to categorize them so you can find them easy. So the way that I've had that built, and you create your category list, you just edit the list and you add in your categories as needed. So oftentimes when I work with clients, I see them categorize them by log type, or I see them categorized by administrator, something like here. What I'm going to do today is use the category of the log type. So all of the templates that I create are going to be in the incident report category. That being said, my categories that I'm using in this example are based on log types. So once you have this, you expand the show logs in the locations, because as you create templates, if you want them usable, they have to live in a log at a location. You need a place for these templates to live. So I want these templates to be in the incident report log type. And then over on the right, I need to put this into a location. So I'm going to put this at the power plant location. Now, the way that this works and the nice function that this has here is, let's say you have multiple incident reports. You have one for the east area or the west area. You don't need to create 4 separate log types. You can have the generic log type, and you can build the templates and assign them to a specific location. So if the incident report is, we have one at the east area, but we also have one at the west area, but maybe it's a little bit different. You can create that as a template and then assign it to the location. So when they choose the log and then a specific location, those different templates will appear dependent on that location. But for this, I want them all at the power plant location. Then I can click save. So now this template lives in the incident report at the power plant location. Now I can collapse this section by clicking on hide logs and locations. Doesn't delete anything. It just gives you a little bit more screen space to work with. And now we have to expand this show fields. This is where we bring and we begin to create the fields. So I'm going to bring this form in just one more time here and explain the field a little bit. So each one of these portions is a field. The name is a field. The date and the time of an injury is a field. The date employed is a field. So when we create fields, we have an area for a prompt and we have an area for a response. This is the prompt, the word name, and and the word date and times of injury, date employed. Those are all the prompts. The spaces that they would fill this in is the response. So we have the prompt and the response, and we can make this so we have a narrow prompt and a wide response, give them plenty of room to put in the data. We also have in a place down here, like here's these questions. We want a space for a wide prompt and then a narrow response, and you'll see this. So all of these are going to be fields. So as we begin this, the first field we need to create is that name field. So in the field section, I click on add new. Now we have the ability to reuse fields. And I always say, if the functionality of a field doesn't change, reuse them. That way you don't have a bunch of different name fields. You don't have to recreate it if the functionality doesn't change. You can just show the existing fields, and I have some created here, and you can just choose it if you want to. Now, what I usually do a lot, some of these I will reuse, but a lot of times for the webinar, I actually go through and create new ones. So these are all of the field types that we have. Calculated field, create dates, created by dates, date and times, list fields. We have a text field, memo field, all that kind of stuff. Each of these fields comes with its own unique functionality. So it just depends what type of data you're collecting in terms of what field will be best. So for the name, where it's like a free response, I want to create a text field. So then I click on to make a new field, and now the screen changes and it shows all of the functionality dependent on what field type you choose. So that prompt is name. Now the description is for you as the administrator. You can always put a little bit more information in here if you need to. You can make every field searchable. On a single row template, you can show the history. So I can make all of these searchable. The show history function allows you to see in eLogger up to the last 100 values of a particular field. So it works really well sometimes with list fields or with numeric or calculated fields. You can see the history and it gives you a graph and a trend line, all that kind of stuff. The let users edit values option basically gives you a read-only component. You can create a field and then you can fill it when you use pre-filled entries, which in the next webinar, I'll actually show you how to use. So with this one, we want the users to edit values. That prompt size, so the narrow prompt wide response, I'm going to guess the vast majority of your fields that you create are going to be that narrow prompt wide response, but you can play with that and I'll show you the difference here. Now in a text field, there's a data format option. You can then choose, they have to put the data in a particular format in order to save the entry. But with a name, I'm just going to leave it blank. You can default a field with particular values, but again, I'm not going to use that. And then here in this unique to this template field, this is almost like an aesthetic look. This is how you can lay this template out and lay the fields out aesthetically. You can choose its width. So you can see you can go a quarter, a third, a half, 2/3, 3/4, and 1. That determines how many fields you can put on a single line. So if I choose a quarter, that means I can put 4 fields on a line. If I choose a third, I can put 3 fields. Personally speaking, I like using a third. And for this one too, it sometimes depends on the form. Notice there's 3 fields across on each line. I'm going to use a third. You know, if I use a half, that means I can put 2 fields on a line and then that third field will automatically start. And then I can start on a new line, the sort order, this visibility and mandatory. The visibility allows you to use conditional fields. You can have a field be visible, which means it's visible all the time for your operators, or I can choose its visibility based on another field. So in the next webinar, when we talk about alarms, I'm going to create this template. I'm going to show you the conditional field option in the next webinar. So it's basically, you know, like if you have a list that says, you know, A, B, C, D, or other, if you choose other, you can have a conditional field pop up that says, please explain. That's how the conditional field option works. Now, making it mandatory will require them to put data in the field in order to save the entry. And then we want it enabled. So I'm going to make this one mandatory just so you can kind of see the difference. Then I can save and close. And I always, no matter what, when I'm working with a template, I show the fields. I also show the preview as I'm building it. So this is, and you'll see that already, I forgot to choose the width. So I have this as a width of a half. I want to go back and change that. Now, the preview allows you to see it as you are building it. I want to change this width. Changing template fields is super easy. All I have to do, go back in and edit. I want to change it to a width of a third. I save and close. And now there's my name field. That next field was the date and the time of the injury. So I'll go back up into my fields and I click on add new. And now because it's a date and time field, I want to use the date and time field option. So the date and time field gives you the option of using a calendar picker and a clock picker. So the prompt again, date and time of injury. You can make it searchable. You can show the history, the let users edit values. Most of this stuff is going to be almost all the same as I build these fields. Now, again, I want this to be a width of a third. I want it to be visible. I'm not going to make this one mandatory, however, and I'm not just because I want to show you the difference. So when I save and close, you'll see the name field is in blue and has the asterisk. That means it's mandatory. I have to put data in it in order to save it. The date and the time of injury is not, means I don't have to fill it in, but that date and time field gives me the calendar picker and the clock picker if I want to use it. You can also put in the date and the time if you want to. So then that date employed is a date field. So I'm going to add new and I'm going to put in the date. So this is the date employed. And again, searchable, the history, the let users edit values, all of that stuff. You choose the functionality for your fields. The default here is to use the current date if you want to use it. And again, I give it a width of a third. I'm not putting it on a new line. I want it visible and I'm not making it mandatory. Save and close. And just like that, I have 3 fields created. And those 3 fields are the name, the date and the time of injury, and the date employed. So now my next field, because I'm using widths of a third, the department or division is going to automatically start on the second line because it's the 4th field and I'm using widths of a third. So my department or division here in this old form, they used to just write it in. Now a text field would be perfectly fine. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a drop-down list. I want a list field, and there's a couple reasons. One, point and click is so much easier for your operators. They don't have to write admin. They don't have to write maintenance. They can just drop it down and select it. So one, lists are easy for your operators to use. And two, it creates a standardization of entries across all of your operators. Because think of the word maintenance, okay? I guarantee it, if I had to write out maintenance, I'm going to spell it wrong 6 times out of 10. Somebody's going to abbreviate it, MTN, MANT period, capital M, small m. You're going to get a whole bunch of variation in even just with that word maintenance. So I'm going to use the list. That way, it's always going to be spelled right. It's going to be standard across the entries, no matter who's creating it. So I want this drop-down list. And now you can see there is specific functionality with your list options. So the prompt, department, I can put a period in there, or division. And again, I can make it searchable. So I'll make this searchable. I can show the history. Now with a list, you create the list options. So you have a list drop-down menu here. You can reuse lists. Now, in my webinar environment, I have a whole lot of duplicated lists, even here. Area to check on inside rounds. I don't want your eLogger system to look like this. This looks like it in mine because each month I restart my webinar series. So sometimes I use lists that I've already created, but a lot of times I will create new ones. You don't have to recreate commonly used lists. Online or offline, yes or no, sat, unsat. Reuse those because you can then just build it once and reuse them over and over and over again. So for this one, I could reuse, like I have a department or division. I could reuse one of these. And then what that does is if I reuse it, it gives me the departments in that list. Keep in mind, if you reuse lists, what it does is it changes it in all of the fields that are using that list. So if I add a department D in here, it's going to change it in other fields that I'm using this same list. If I want to create a new list, I just choose that. And then in this list name, I always say, give it a name that when you see the list name, you're gonna know what it is. So I'm gonna call this company, departments, or divisions, and then I hit the create button. So you create the list options for that. So we may have maintenance, we may have operations, we may have administration, we may have engineering, and you could as many as you need. I don't know, however many it is. Okay. So then you create those list options. When you click on the add items button, they shift over to the left. So now here's these drag handle buttons. So I can sort these. I can also alphabetize them. So if I want to move them around, I just drag and drop them just like that, or you can alphabetize them and it resorts them. Then when you have a list, you can flag values. So what that does is if you have like satisfactory, unsatisfactory, you can flag the unsatisfactory list option. It puts a little yellow border around it, makes it stick out. Lets them save the entry, but it just is a visual cue that, hey, there's something unsatisfactory about this. So in this one, I don't want to do. I can also fill a list with the defaulted value. And then I want to give it a width of 1/3. I'm not going to put it on a new line. It's already going to start. So when I save and close, that department or division is now my drop-down list. Way easier to select administration than key it out in a text field. So the next one is my work phone. So I'm going to create this as a text field. And this is going to be my work phone number. And then again, I can make it searchable. I can use the data format if I want to. I can default it. Now the default, I'm going to put include extension in here just to show you how the default works. So I want them to include the extension in here, and that will be defaulted, and they can just highlight it and key over it. So then I'm going to give this a width of 1/3 and save and close. So using the defaulted value for a field automatically defaults that. So then they would just highlight over that and they would put their number in just like that. So however they want to do it. Okay. And that last one was the projected days missed. So I'm going to add another field. And now the projected days missed, I'm going to create this as a numeric field so they can only put a number in there. If I'm going to miss 2 days, possibly I have to put the number 2 in there as opposed to writing TW0 or TWO. So the numeric field, I'm going to make a new field, and the prompt, projected days missed. And then again, I can make it searchable. I can show the history. Now with a numeric field, you have some unique functionality as well. So I can use a unit of measure. I have a whole lot of units of measure created here, and you can create as many as you need. So if you have this form where you do some daily readings, you can have a parts per million tag, you can have a gallons, you can have a minute. You can create all of those just by editing and adding in your units of measure. So it puts that unit of measure tag at the end of the field. So for this one, I want days, and I can display it up to 6 decimal digits, but I oftentimes just use display exactly as entered. Now in a numeric field, you have the hard limit and the soft limit. So imagine having like a gauge, and that gauge reads from maybe 0 to 250. I can put those in the hard limit, 0 and 250. That prevents the save. So if I mistakenly key in 350 or 2500, it won't let me save it. The hard limit prevents the save and it helps eliminate typos. Now the soft limit is almost like a normal range. So in that gauge, that 0 to 250, the normal range may be between 80 and 140. If you put 80 and 140 in that soft limit, anything below 80 or above 140, it will flag it. It will allow them to save it, but it will put that yellow warning border around it, just saying that this is kind of out of range. You should take a look at this. So I don't need those for this. I'm going to give it a width of 1/3. I'm going to save and close. And now I have my second line created. So here's the projected days missed. There's the unit of measure tag. So I'm going to get back to this form real quick because we have 3 more fields. 3 more fields on the form, but the shift injured on, I'm going to actually eliminate because the shift can be you choose the shift when you make an entry. The other reason is just for the lack of time. It's basically the same, but I have this, they have to check full-time or part-time. And then they have this big memo field in here that they can, put in their narrative or whatever. They can explain what happened. So with that full-time, part-time, that employment status, I'm going to do is a radio button. This is a radio button list right here. Displays all of the options, and then they can select one. I like the radio button list if you have like 3 list items or less. I like the drop down if I have more than 3, just save some space. But again, completely up to you. If you like drop downs, use drop downs. If you like radio buttons, use radio buttons. So this radio button list, I'm going to make a new one. And now they have to check full-time or part-time. So I'm going to create this as employment status. I can make it searchable. I can show the history. Now I have an employment status list. So if I already have it, I can do that, but I'm going to create this list as full-time / part-time. That way I know that I will know this list when I see the list options. So I hit create and I put in here full-time, part-time, and I add those items in and it gives me those options. Now I'm going to flag the part-time just so you can see what happens when you flag a field. I'm going to give this a width of 1/3. I'm going to click save and close. And now with this employment status, here's the radio button list. If I choose full-time, if I choose part-time, there's where I flagged the entry. Or no, I didn't flag the entry, I flagged the field. So that's that so far. Questions at all? Okay, so with no questions, that last field was like describe the circumstances causing the injury. It was that big box that they can write in. But here, I think we have a question. Okay, we don't. Perfect. Okay, so that next one, that big box that they have, this is where they have that free text area. They can key in, the events or their explanation as to what happened or whatever it's going to be. So we want to give them plenty of space to write in. So I'm going to click add new, and I'm going to do this as a memo field. So a memo field, very similar to a text field, it's just bigger, gives them more space. So I'm going to make a new field, and now describe the circumstances causing the injury. That's what it says. I'm going to try to shrink the prompt down. I'm just going to say employee summary. You might have, summary of events, employee narrative. The prompt is going to be whatever you want to have it. Okay. And again, we can make it searchable. We can show the history. The one thing with a memo field is you have the ability, these formatting options that are in the prompt, you can turn them on for a memo field. If you want them to be able to format a memo field, you can turn that on by putting the check in the checkbox. If you don't want them to format that text field or the memo field, I'm sorry, just uncheck it. And then because that field stretched all the way across, I'm going to give it a width of 1. So they're going to have plenty of space to write in their summary of events. So that first template, if we look at this, I'll try to shrink this down a little bit, kind of. So name, date and time of injury, date employed. The template we just created looks pretty similar to this. Now, this is the reason why I'm creating multiple templates, because there's a nice break in the form, plus my witness statement, there's some added functionality that I want to use with the witness statement. So what I'm going to do is save and close. Now what happens is with this template, it shows here. So if I go home, because it lives in a location and then at a log type, when you choose that log and location combination, the templates associated with those, it automatically shows up. So they would just go through and fill that up. So that's that one. Now, that witness statement, what the form says is to attach a statement for each, and they just list them, the name, the title, and the phone number for every witness that was there. So I want to use this multi-row grid functionality here. So I'm going to create I'm going to go back into the templates tab. I'm going to create a new one. Now I'm going to call this my witnesses. And in the description, I'm going to say a statement. Now I'm going to use that multi-row grid function because it's going to give me the ability to add multiple lines. If I have one witness, I had one line. If I have 7 witnesses, I had 7 lines. And I can add as many as needed. So again, I want to attach it to my category. I need it to live in the incident report log at the power plant. And again, we can close this. So now the fields, I have a name field, a title field, and a phone number field. So I can add a new one. Now I have a name field already created. So I don't need the functionality of that field to change. So I can show the existing field. And now I can go down, choose the name field that I want. And it's already filled in. Now, using the multi-row grid function, it's going to give you like a columned look. So the width is in percentages, and you can stretch the columns out. So for this one with 3 fields, if I leave it blank, each field's going to be 33% of the width. And I'm just not going to change it. If I leave this blank, it takes the number of fields and divides it into 100 and splits them up evenly. So when I save and close, because I only have one field in the preview, it's going to stretch all the way across. But now I have that title field. So I'm going to add a new text field here. It's going to be the title. And I don't need anything else. Notice that the history function, because I'm using a multi-row grid functionality, the show history feature is not available in a multi-row grid template, but I can make it searchable. And then I'm going to save and close. So I have the name and the title. And now on the entry, there's going to be a little add link right here. They can just add as many in. And that last one was the phone number. So now I have a phone number already created. I have another field, so I can just find my phone number. I can choose which one I want, and I can save and close. So those 3 fields, name, title, work phone, looks just like that. Name, title, and phone number. The multi-row grid function, when I save and close this, it takes you back to the templates tab. And now you'll see that I have 2. Now here's the category. This is the incident report category. So now I would be able to filter. If I want to see only the templates associated with the incident report, I can filter that and it will only show those if I have many more templates. But now on the add new entry screen, those 2 templates are displayed, and see the difference. Here's this witness using the multi-row grid function. So if there's one witness, I just click the add button once, fill it in, save it. If there's 3, I can add 3 lines, put in their name, put in their title, put in their work phone, and save it. I'm all done. Okay. Questions on that at all? Okay. I'm going to go back into system administration. Now I'm going to go right to the add new template, because this next one here, the OSHA standards. Now I know nothing about OSHA, but they have to go through, they have to search the OSHA website and see if there's any OSHA standards that are potentially involved in here. So there's 2 fields. They have the OSHA number, the OSHA link. Now there's some nice functionality too here that I'm going to get to. So I'm just going to say, here's the OSHA standards involved. Spell it right. And it says go to www.osha.gov and search under regulations. Now, again, I want to try to help you as system administrator make these templates and make eLogger as easy as possible for your operators to use. So it says go to OSHA.gov. What you can do, I'm going to highlight this. And now there's a button on the title that's called the Hyperlink Manager. You can make this a clickable link. If you click the Hyperlink Manager, brings up another box. Now, the URL, you can put a specific URL and you'll have to do some testing because, and I don't know, I think it is OSHA. Sometimes you have to put the S in here. If the link doesn't work, try putting the S in here and see if it works. And then you just put in OSHA.gov. Now the link text, you can say click here, or this is the OSHA website, or whatever it is. I'm just going to leave it as what I highlighted. Now the target, I like to have this open in a new window, only because when I click it, it's going to open up another window and it's going to leave eLogger open. I just have to close the window and I can click OK. So what this does now is it makes this link a clickable link that's going to take them to the OSHA website. Super easy for your operators to use. You can create that as an administrator. And again, they're going to like it because it's easy. So I'm not going to put a description in here. I'm going to put it in the same category, attach it to the same log, and in the same location. Now there's two fields. Okay, the two fields that I want to create, the first one is a numeric field. That's the OSHA number. So I'm going to create this as the OSHA number. And you can make it searchable. You can show the history. We don't need a unit of measure. We don't need hard limits or soft limits. I'm going to make this a width of 1/3. And now in the preview, that's what it looks like. And you can see this as a clickable link. They click on it, it's going to take them to the OSHA website, and then they can do their searches. So the second field in there was the link itself. We have a link field that allows you to attach a URL to an entry. So the easiest thing to do is when you're in that OSHA website, copy the URL, paste it into this field, and it becomes a clickable link within the entry itself. So I'm going to make a new field, and this is the OSHA link. You can make it searchable again, but now links can sometimes get kind of lengthy. So I'm going to make this 2/3. So you can see in the aesthetic layout, you can make fields specific. So here's 1/3, here's 2/3, gives plenty of space to show that link. So then if I just click on this, it opens up in that new tab. I search under laws and regulations, then I find, oh, it relates to this one or whatever it's going to be. And then they can put that in there. So now I can't remember how to get rid of that. So we'll just go back. So I'm going to save and close. And now that one is done. So we have so far 3 templates created. Now on the form, if I bring this back, this next chunk, I didn't want to do that. There we go. This next chunk here, it's almost kind of the same. I mean, different pieces of data you're collecting, but the format is the same. So they have to just check which type of PPE did they use. They have to check what factors did they cause the incident. They have to determine what was your nature of injury. And then they also have to select what types of medical treatment. So these are all basically check boxes, except for this nature of injury. I'm going to remove this nature of injury field for now, because I want to show you it's not really a solid checklist, because they have a checklist and then they have to do some circling. Okay, so it's a little bit different. Plus, I want to show you some different functionality. But I'm going to take these 3, as long as they're kind of the same. This is where you can change forms and you can change the layout of it. It's just they're collecting the exact same data. It's just in a little bit different of a layout. So what I'm going to do is move this so we have the personal protective equipment used, the factors, and the medical treatment. So I'm going to add a new template, and we have to title this. So I'm just going to call this miscellaneous information for now. And I want to put all of those in one template. Makes it a little bit easier. Plus it makes the entry a little bit smaller vertically. So again, same category, same log, same location. And now they're just checklists. It's going to display all the options and they just put a check mark in each of the boxes. So I'm going to hide this. And the first field, I want to choose a multi-select list. It is just that. Displays all of the options and allows them to choose multiple of the list items. So I'm going to make a new field, and this is the PPE used. I can make this searchable. Now I have a PPE used list. If I want to reuse it, I just have to go find it. So let's say I have it in another form. Here's the one that I want to use. Okay. I'm not going to default it. I'm just going to give it a width of 1/3. I'm going to save and close. And now here is that multi-select list. I can go through and check. I can filter this out. So I can kind of, if it's a long list, I can just say, I need the ones with, so you can filter out as well. Okay. So that's the multi-select list. There's 2 more. So I'm going to add a new one, and this is another multi-select list. And this is the factors causing the incident. Now, if I need a new one, I can just leave this list name as it is. If I hit the create button, and the nice thing is I've kind of cheated. I have this on an Excel spreadsheet as well. So what I can do is I can take that from the spreadsheet, I can copy, paste it in there, and then I can add those items in. Now, if I alphabetize these, I can alphabetize them, but notice the other, usually like none or other is always on the bottom. So I can just drag this and move it to the bottom. Okay. So then here's my list, give it a width of 1/3, save and close. Now, one thing you'll notice on this list is there's some wrapping here. Now, because I only gave it a width of 1/3, it's also because of screen resolution sometimes. So right now this wraps, I have my screen resolution set at 125% because that just seems to work really well for webinars. If I shrink this down to 100, which a lot of you people have like on the site, now notice there's no wrapping here and it's nice and on one line and everything. It's just for the webinar, it's easier at 125%. And then the last one is the medical treatment. Keep in mind that nature of injury field, I'm going to add it in another template. So now we have the medical treatment. So I'm going to add another multi-select list. And this is going to be my medical treatment. Again, you can make it searchable. So here is medical treatment. I'll say, let's see, medical treatment for incident report. I hit create, and you can key these in manually if you need to. So one, there was no treatment. First aid on site. Employee health clinic. In outside medical treatment. So you can key them in also. And then I add those items in. Give it a width of 1/3. Save and close. So now what I did for this is I took that chunk of the form. So the PPE used, the factors, and the medical treatment, and I put that all in one template. I mean, you wouldn't have to do that, but it just seems easier. And it's a little bit more concise, a little bit more easy. So when I save and close, now I'm going to jump right into that nature of injury. So I'm going to bring this back down a little bit real quick. Now the nature of injury is a little bit different because there's some right and the left, and you look at the finger they have. So I want to make this its own template for that reason, because it's not quite by eLogger definition a multi-select list. It's kind of like a multi-select list and a radio button list kind of in together. So it's that list within a list. So what I'm going to do is add a new template, and I'm going to call this nature of injury. And I'm going to use the multi-row grid because you could potentially hurt multiple body parts here. So I'm going to put this in the incident report, attach it to the log in the location. And now I want one field built. That's it. So my field, and I'm just going to do this as now a dependent list. The other reason I'm putting it in another template is because there's a little bit different functionality involved. So a dependent list, if you're familiar with eLogger, it's your location picker. It's that list within a list. So I'm going to make a new field and I'm just going to say list all that apply. That's what I'm going to call the prompt. And I'm going to make this searchable. And now I have a body part list. So I can just reuse this because I'm going to just save some time here. I just have a bodily injury list. Okay. Nope. I'm going to show you how to do it different. So I'm going to make a new one. So I want this as a body part list. I'm going to hit create. I'm going to go back to my fancy spreadsheet because I have that already created as well. I'm going to copy and paste. And I'm going to add those items in. So on the dependent list, notice it's a little bit, it looks different, okay? But this is the list within the list. So like my hands, I can highlight hands and now I can put right and left and I can add those in. I can do the same thing with my eye and everything else that there's two of, right and left. But now I can even go down. So like in my hands, I can say right, I could say thumb, index, middle, ring, pinky. I'm going to cheat here a little bit. Copy those before I add them in. I'm going to highlight left and I'm going to put them in there. So I'm kind of redoing this list a little bit. So now I can drill down and I can choose hands, then I choose right hand, then I can choose my index finger if I hurt my index finger. So now my fingers here, I don't even really need. And you can do this, you know, with anything that has multiple, right and left shoulder, right and left arm, right and left wrist, right and left hip. You could do that all the way through. I'm not going to do that. So this is going to stretch all the way across. So this is going to be a multi-row grid function. So if you hurt multiple body parts, you just have the add link here. And I can say, yep, I hurt my right thumb. Looks a little bit different, performs a little bit different, but it captures everything that you need. So there's that one. Questions at all? Because I have a few more things to do and I got about 8 minutes. So like I said, I'm probably going to run over a little bit, but if you can stick around, that's great. If you can't, I completely understand. So the next part here, okay, is the employee signature, the supervisor signature, these SOP questions, and this incident evaluation. I'm going to omit one. I'm going to omit this employee signature because you don't really need it. The employee is creating the entry, and on the entry, there's the created by field that automatically is in every single entry. We know who's creating this entry and when the date was. So I don't even need this. But I do need this supervisor signature. So in theory here, the employee is going to fill this out. An alert's going to go out to the supervisor, which in the next webinar is actually going to happen. And then they're going to take a look at it. They are going to do all the things that they need to do, and then they're going to sign it electronically. They're going to have their signature in here. It's not a signature. It's going to be their name. It's going to be their title. And it's going to be the date. So, and I'm not even going to put the title in there because we already know what the title is. They're the supervisor. So I'm going to add a new template. And I'm going to call this supervisor signature. I'm going to make this a multi-row grid because it's going to put the add button in there and it's going to be super easy for your operators. Again, assign it to the category, put it in a log, add a location. And I basically want two fields, the signature field and the date field. And the nice thing is I can add this in. And now I want to do a created by field. A created by field puts the name of the person logged in on the machine in that entry. So this is going to be, we'll just call this name and I'm going to save it. So now in the preview, because I'm logged into the machine, it's automatically going to capture. And then I'm going to put in the create date field. It's going to do the same thing except capture the date. I'm just going to call this the date, save and close. And here's the date and the time that the supervisor is electronically signing this. So I'm going to save and close. So when I go home and I add this entry, so in theory, what would happen is the operator fills this out, goes through and fills all of this stuff out, click save, the alert goes out to the supervisor looks over all this, and it could be an hour later, it could be a day later. When the supervisor edits this entry, looks over everything and signs it, they click the add button, puts their name in because they're logged into the machine, and puts the date that they're clicking the add button in. So it's kind of like that electronic signature and time. So questions on that at all? That's the created by and the create date field. So there's two other templates that I'm going to create. One are those SOP questions. So let me get into the templates tab under system administration. I'm going to add a new one. So these are supervisor SOP question. Oops. SOP questions. And I'm going to bring these down here real quick. So here's these questions. So the supervisor looks at this, were all the company policies followed? Yes or no? Do new policies need to be implemented? Yes, yes or no? And have all the appropriate personnel been informed? Yes or no? So I'll create a couple of those because you'll get the gist of it real fast. So again, we want this to be in the correct category, attached to the same login location. And now when we build this, the prompt is going to become the question. So the type of field, it's a yes, no question. It works really well as a radio button. So now the prompt is the question itself. And now I'm just going to copy and paste. I'll put that question mark in because I missed it. Now, long question, long prompt. So we can make it searchable. We can show the history, but I want to change the prompt size now. I want more space for the prompt, less space for the response. I have a yes, no field already created. I'm going to reuse that yes, no field. And I'm going to stretch this to a width of 1 because I want that question to stretch all the way across the screen. So when I open it up, using the wide prompt narrow response looks like this. If I were to edit this and use the narrow prompt wide response, it works, but it just it gives not a lot of space for the prompt itself. It works. If you like it this way, that's perfectly fine. I just would prefer that question to be a little bit more spread out. So I'm going to have it this way, and I'm going to add one more. And again, it's going to be a radio button. And that question, again, it's the question, is the prompt itself. And then I have my yes, no list that I'm reusing again. I'm going to stretch it to a width of 1. So each of those questions, I forgot. I go back and edit. I want the wide prompt. Save and close. So now each of those questions using the wide prompt narrow response and a width of 1, and they just go through and check whichever one they need. Okay, so got those. Last one. I kind of like doing the last one because it's kind of fun. So I'm going to go back in and create this last template. This is this incident evaluation. And it looks kind of like there's a lot of stuff, but it's just a lot of stuff. There's only 4 fields to it, but it has a whole bunch of instructions for the evaluator, which is going to be the supervisor. So it says to be compiled on a scale of 1 to 5, they got to rank them, and then it defines what each field is. I want to include that on the entry. So what I'm going to do is, this is the incident evaluation. And notice I spelled it wrong. You can right click it and spell it right if you have. Now in this description, I want these instructions. I gotta try to copy and paste the right way. There we go. So this first one, to be compiled by the supervisor. So it says on a scale of 1 to 5, rank the severity, frequency, and probability. But there are some other pieces here as well. It defines what the severity is. So I want this in here. And on the form, it was red. So I'm going to make it red here too. Then it defined what the frequency is. And all I'm doing is just copying and pasting from the form. That's all I'm doing. And this one was green. And then the probability was blue. So again, copy and paste. Then I'm just formatting that description. And this one was blue. So now that looks just like that. So now we have 4 fields actually: the severity, the frequency, the probability. Then we need to add those up. So again, I want to add it to the correct category, put it in the correct log and location, and then build those fields. So those 4 fields, the first one was the severity. So I'm going to do a numeric field, and this was the severity. I can get really fancy because the instructions were red. I can even make this red if I want to. Now I can make this searchable. I can show the history. I don't need a prompt size. I don't need a unit of measure, but it says on a scale of 1 to 5. So now my hard limit is going to be 1 to 5. I don't want a supervisor to say, oh my God, this is super severe. I'm going to rank this a 7. They can only rank it from 1 to 5. So I'm going to make this a width of 1/4. I'm going to have 4 fields going across. And now when I save and close, because I put that hard limit in here, if I put 7, it's going to not let me save it. I have to have between 1 and 5. So the next one then is the frequency. So I'm going to add a new numeric field. This was the frequency, and this was in green. We can make this searchable too. The hard limit's going to be between 1 and 5. Make it a width of 1/4. So severity, frequency. We have another numeric field, which is the probability. That one was in blue. Again, I'll make it searchable. That hard limit be between 1 and 5. And now one more field to create, and I think I have them all. That was that evaluation score. So basically it says, hey, as a supervisor, add these up. If it's a score of 12 or higher, we need to investigate it. So I want to add a new one, and now I want to do a calculated field. We're going to let eLogger do the calculation for us. So it can do pretty complex calculations. The calculations have to be, those numeric fields have to be within the same template, however. So this is our evaluation score. I'm going to make this searchable. Now the soft limit says anything that's a score of 12 or higher. So I'm going to put this a normal range between 0 and 11. I want it to flag anything that is 12 or higher. And now I need to add these together. So in this calculation field, notice these 3 fields. These are 3 numeric fields, and we can do a whole bunch of stuff. So remember, when you're doing a calculation, you have to follow order of operations, but you can add, subtract, multiply, divide. You can find averages. You can find totals. You can do a whole lot of very creative stuff as long as all of the numeric fields are in the same template. So I want the way that we have this, first of all, severity, frequency, probability. I click on this and it puts it into that. And then I click the plus button, severity, and then I want the frequency plus the probability. So we are adding these together. I'm going to give it a width of 1/4, save and close. Now your evaluation score field reads as a read only. So if this was a 1, this was a 2, this was a 3, the evaluation score is 6. It does not need to be investigated. If this was a really bad one, now the evaluation score is 12 or higher, it's flagged it. It says we need to investigate it. So I am done, except think of the order here. So this supervisor signature, I want this to be at the bottom. I want the supervisor to do all the work they have to do first and then sign it electronically. So I'm going to take this. Here's the drag handles on the template. I can just drag this down and resort it. Now the supervisor signature is on the bottom. So go back home and let's actually add this entry. Choose our shift, choose our crew. So here's the incident report. So I fill this in. Kevin got hurt today at, let's say, 8 o'clock. He was employed on the 1st. He is in maintenance. I'm going to cheat here and just say extension 4. I'm expected to miss 2 days. I'm a full-time employee. Here is the summary of what happened. Then I have to explain the witnesses. How many witnesses do I have? We'll have 2. So we'll have Jake with us. He's an operator. Extension 5. We have Renee with us. She was there too. She was the supervisor. Her extension is 6. Now, I have no idea what the OSHA stuff is. So here, let me close this now like it's not there. I click on the OSHA link. I go to laws and regulations. I got to look through and say, here's general industry. Let's see. Oxygen. Yep, this looks like the right one. So this is 1910.104. Now, I want to copy this URL. So I copy that. I put in the number 1910.104 and I paste that link in there, and it will be displayed in the entry. So here's all that miscellaneous information. I was wearing, let's say, a back belt. I had hand protection on. That's it. So I fell. I got caught under something, and I don't know. Fell against something else. And then I got first aid on site. So what happened? I hurt my head and I hurt my left hand. Then I would click save. So Kevin, the operator, fills this part out. So in the next webinar, I'm going to make sure that Kevin, the operator, only sees that. Kevin, the supervisor, has been alerted. Here's the incident report. So now Kevin, the supervisor, can go in and edit, look over all of this stuff and say, were the company policies followed? Yes. Have all the appropriate personnel been informed? Yes. We'll say, man, the severity was a 3. The frequency, it's not going to happen very often. What's the probability? We'll say this is a 4. So an evaluation score of 9, we don't need to investigate it. I signed this as Kevin, the supervisor, at 11:08. I click save. And there is the entry. A lot of templates attached to it. So you'll see when multiple templates are used, each one of them has that very light gray box around it. Just kind of separates it out. If a report is generated, there's the report. And again, I apologize for running late. I knew I would, but I want to make sure, are there any questions at all? No question. So for those of you that were in attendance today, I want to thank you very much. Next webinar is going to cover some of the other features that we have. The alerts, we're going to create some email alerts, some notifications. I'm going to do a pre-filled entry. I'm also going to look back at some templates. There's some more template stuff I want to show you, but that's for the next one. So you can go to our website, elogger.com. Scroll to the bottom is the training link. Sign up for the next webinar if you like. And I will let you all go. Have a wonderful day, and we will talk to you very soon.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.